Alright, welcome to another tutorial in Maya. Today, let's take a look at how to track an object in a scene. And what I've done here, let's do a quick scene breakdown. What I have here is a couple of objects, just simple spheres cruising through a scene. Maybe this is a city with some buildings and stuff. So anyway, what we're going to do is look at this camera and aim option. It's sort of the second camera you can choose. And this type of camera allows us to sort of set an aim that we want on an object and maybe track it through a scene. And let's do this. I'm going to stop. What you can see here is I've created a couple of different motion paths. And these motion paths are controlling the sphere cruising through the scene here. And then the aim is basically attached to a duplicate motion path. So this is just one way to sort of track an object. It's not necessarily the right way or the wrong way. It's just a way. So be prepared. This tutorial is probably going to stretch into a two-part series because we're going to cover a little bit of stuff here that'll make it a lot easier for you to create this kind of setup. And it's fairly simple. I'm going to show you the path, and let's get to it. So first I'm just going to push pause. And let's take a look at what I have going on here in this scene. As you can see, there's some motion paths that are indicated by the curve right here. You'll notice that these little things are curves. And basically it's just duplicated. And I've created a couple different types here. I've used the CV curve tool, which gives us kind of a nice rounded flow on this object right here. So I'm going to push play. And you can see where that sort of flows nicely because it's a CV curve. It has nice rounded edges and such. If you look at the one down here, our other one on the bottom, this is the the EP curve tool. And it produces sort of more of a hard edge and a hard bank, kind of, so to speak. So we're going to look at both of those. For right now, we're just going to use the CV curve tool. But just be aware that you can use your other curve tool option. Under Create here, you have your CV curve tool or your EP curve tool. So we'll look at both of those, I guess, because we have enough time. So let's get started. What I'm going to do is come down here and let's just close out of this scene like we always do, and let's just open a new scene. I don't need to save what I have going there. So now we're on a blank slate. So let's just create some quick geometry to get started. We'll do polygons. We'll do the cubes. Basically make some buildings. Now, if you come up here into your Create before we get started, and just make sure that your interactive creation is on, and on exit on completion, let's just decheck that for the moment, okay? Because what that's going to allow us to do is just sort of drag buildings up. I'm going to go into my shaded mode, and you can just sort of keep clicking on the grid and interactively building some buildings. Alright, so we'll just build a quick city here. I'm just clicking on the grid, setting a size, and then clicking again and making that get a little taller. So we'll put a short one in there, and let's get a big one right there, and we'll put one right there. Okay, maybe do one in the front here. Alright, so let's do one more. Let's bring one in over here. Okay, so let's go in and look at our wireframe mode, and we can kind of see where everything's sitting here. I'll go to my home view, and let's take this big building in the foreground here and move it back a little bit. I'll just choose my move tool, and yeah, we'll set it back here a little bit more. Okay, so now we just have some simple geometry, and that's cool. It's what we want. We'll just go ahead and stay with that for the moment. Now, let's go to the home view, and what we're going to do is make a curve first. We're still going to weave it in and out of this scene. So we'll sort of space these out a little more. Okay, now let's create our curves. What you'll want to do is hover anywhere in this view, deselect anything, just hit the space bar once, and we're going to go to the top view over here. So bring your cursor over, get the top view, hit the space bar, cruise on back, and now you can see this is basically the top of the scene, top of the geometry. So that's cool. It's kind of what we want. So now let's create a CV curve. So we'll grab the CV curve tool, and I'm just going to weave in and out of these objects as I set points. So I'm going to just make a starting point of, say, right here. So I'll click once there, and then I'm just going to sort of come down here, set another point, click again, and as you can see, as I start clicking, the curve starts to take shape. So we'll come over here and maybe come around here, and let's go around the back side of this building. And what I want to do is just sort of weave in and out of this scene, and then we'll track this object. So you'll notice that I have a nice curve going here, and we'll just sort of bring this up here. We'll kind of come back. Let's make it over here and over here and over here. Now you'll notice that I haven't closed this curve. I've left this open for the moment because we're gonna close that later. All right. So for the moment, let's look at that curve. Go ahead and choose your choose tool over here, and now we're out of the CV curve tool, and you can see where we have this nice curve. Okay, well that's cool. That's what we want. I'm gonna just press the space bar and come over into this view, press the space bar again, and now you can see our curve is sitting there on the grid. And let's grab it and move it up just a little bit. So I'll choose it and just move it up. Okay, that just gets us up off the ground a little bit. Now, before we go any further, we have to sort of tell our scene and this curve how long it should be. So instead of 24 frames, let's switch this right now to about, say, 500 frames. Okay, so now we have a 500 frame timeline, and that'll make a difference when we assign a camera to this curve, and I'll show you why. Okay, so now that we have that, let's create a quick object. Let's create a sphere. So I'm going to create polygon, and we'll create a sphere, and it's sitting right here at the moment. And it doesn't really matter where it's at, because you'll see in a second here why. Okay, so let's have that sphere. Let's connect it to this curve. So I'm going to shift click on that curve. Oh, you'll notice that when I did that, I'm still in my creation mode, interactive creation. So if we come over here to create, and we go to our polygon primitives, and we'll exit on completion, and now I could sort of just grab a sphere. I'm going to delete that, and this little guy down in here, let's see if I can get it. It shows up as a sphere. I clicked over there. I'm going to delete that. Okay, so anyway, now that we've exited on completion, we're not just creating stuff anymore. So okay, so let's grab that sphere first, and then let's click on this curve. Okay, and what I want to do is come up here, make sure you're in your animation menu set, grab animate, and we're going to create a motion path for that sphere. So we're going to attach that sphere to a motion path. Okay, boom, you can see it shows up down here. Let's take a look at it. You can see where it goes from frame, it's a little hard to see, but frame 1 all the way to frame 500. And let's bring it back a little bit. So now if I were to play that animation, I'll go ahead and play this, hit play, you'll notice that sphere is sort of cruising through the scene there along that path. And that's what we want. We just sort of want it to meander through. So cool. All right, let's go on to stage 2. And let's come back up here. I think I'll just go back to my home view. What we want to do is I want to close this curve now. Because it's open, I'll show you kind of how it looks. We have this 1 to 500, but we have a gap in between here. So let's close the curve real quick. I'm just going to grab my choose tool here, and well, let's see. Let's not choose the whole thing. Well, actually, yes. Well, actually, no. Well, we can. Let's do it this way and try. I'm going to close this curve. So what we have to do is come up here into your surfaces now, and we want to close that. we want to edit that curve, and we want to open or close it. And so let's put it closed. So you can see it jumped over there and we're now closed. So that when the animation is playing, it basically will start from the beginning and that ball will roll all the way through. And then when it comes to the end, let's just put it right there at the end, you can see it just keeps its continuous motion through there. So that's cool. We'll stay with that. All right, on to the next thing. We're going to create a camera now. Go ahead and go back to your home view. And usually a camera when it's created shows up at the center of the grid, so we kind of want to be looking at that for a second. And come up and do a create, camera, camera, and aim. Alright, so now you can see the camera and aim sitting down there. So before we do anything else, what I want to do is I want to assign this camera and aim to a curve. And we're going to assign it to exactly the same curve. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on my curve there. And let's do a duplicate. Come to your edit, do a Command D or just duplicate. Okay, so now I've duplicated that curve. I'm going to click on my move tool and move that curve up a little bit. Okay, so now you can see I have a duplicate curve, and that's cool. That's what we want. Now, next thing, let's go back to this camera down here. And I'm going to choose the camera and move it back a little bit. And you'll notice that the aim does not move. Okay, so let's go back down there for a second. Let's choose the camera and aim and just move it out of the way. We'll just sort of move it over here for a moment. Okay, now here's where we're going to attach it to its motion path. Okay, it doesn't really matter where the camera is at the moment, so we're not going to worry about that. But what does matter is that the camera and the aim are chosen first and then attached to your duplicate curve. So I'll go ahead and grab the camera, I'll shift click on the aim, and then I'll shift click on this top curve. That's our duplicate curve. Okay, and now what I want to do is make sure you're in your animation menu set right here and come over to animate, and we're going to animate that. We're going to attach that to the motion path. Okay, so you can see where the camera stayed here, but all of a sudden we have the aim is extended all the way over here to where it should be on the motion path. So you can see where it's sort of following that object along, and that's exactly what we want. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just click in the scene anywhere outside of here, and we want to just click the camera only. We want to deactivate everything, click camera only, and let's come to our panel and go look through selected. So now I'm looking through the camera, and that's cool, but I want to change the camera angle a little bit. So I'll go ahead and just grab my dolly tool there. Okay, I'm going to come up here and we'll sort of do a scene from down here. And now I'm going to click play. As you can see, it's tracking that object as it's moving through the scene. You may want to switch the camera into a different position, but you can see where it kind of nicely follows that. And that's that camera and aim, which is really cool. So anyway, that's the concept. Now let's show you another thing real quick here. We're in the camera one. Let's go back to our perspective view before we make any changes, or as we're making changes. Let's take this camera and let's animate this camera just to sort of move up or down. What you can do is you don't want to choose both the camera and the aim. You want to make sure you have just one or the other at the moment selected. So this is really important, and we're running out of time on this, so I'm gonna just continue this with part 2, and we'll take a look at adding some camera moves to this camera. Okay, so there you go. Stay tuned for part 2, and don't read a book at the moment, because you're gonna have to finish this tutorial. So we're gonna go through part 2. All right, thanks for watching, and see you for part 2.